guys and gals. This is Alex Costa of the ANR Design Unholstered podcast, episode 7, with Tyler Roberts of Licentia Arms. Tyler specializes in night vision accessories, thermals, and anything expensive as fuck. Anyway, Tyler, thank you so much for being on the show. Tell us a little bit about your brand.
Yeah, so I'm one of the owners of Licentia Arms, like Alex said, and we focus primarily in helmet-mounted night vision and clip-on night vision devices. We also do thermal, but night vision's kind of our core business. We are a true manufacturer. We build all of our systems in-house, and we work directly with pretty much all of our suppliers, good relationships with L3 and all that good stuff, and it's so we focus on the high-end space, and we don't really do a whole lot of budget options just because we look at what night vision is and what it should be. And you get to a point where you get so cheap that you're really doing yourself a disservice. So that's kind of really where we live in the market.
Awesome. And yeah, that is so true, because you can't really sell budget night vision. For people that haven't looked through night vision, describe like the quality of what a high-end 22 UA 2600 plus FOM white phos tube versus like what people are actually selling on the low end right now that are popular, and the quality of the image.
Yeah, it really breaks down to, and it's kind of one of those things when you look at what you're buying a product to see in the dark. And really what we push is there's a lot of different housing options and a lot of different tube options out there, but we always push invest in your tubes, because to your point, there's a lot of low-end garbage that's being sold. And then there's also a lot of really high-end, really nice night vision. And so if you haven't looked through night vision, when you look through it, it's pretty close traditionally to what you see in some of the movies that are more realistic. Like 13 Hours is a good example. They've got good representation of night vision, even though most of the stuff's green, but there's pretty much green and white phosphor. So you're going to see a green shaded image or a white shaded image. Green has pretty much got to the point where it's not cost effective, just because the military is going all white phosphor. So Elbit and L3, they're not manufacturing green phosphor in quantity enough to really make it cost effective anymore. So that's why, unless we get like some special runs of tubes or a good deal on them, we don't really buy green tubes. But when you look through it, so you've got your white or your green shaded image, and it's all going to be in that color, and that's the color of your phosphor screen. And so you're going to see the difference between something that's low end versus something that's high end is really what you're going to see is called noise. And lighting conditions provides a big variance of what you're going to see. But if you're on like a good moon, you're going to see a good crisp image. Reading is going to be really, really nice with a good high FOM tube. And where that comes into play is with your FOM, you've got your resolution factor multiplied by your signal to noise ratio. And that signal noise ratio really goes into your low light performance. So a higher FOM tube, you're going to get a higher signal to noise ratio. So your tube is going to perform a lot better across a wide range of environmental conditions versus something that's low end. It's going to get really grainy. You're going to need a lot of external illumination. So that's really the primary difference.
Cool. So I'm glad you explained FOM and explain UA. What is UA?
So it's actually, there's a lot of misconceptions over what those mean. So that's an L3 part number, and each part of that, the number, and then both letters play into what that tube is, how that tube is purchased. And so when we go to L3 and we purchase a tube, we purchase it by part number, and everything is really based off minimums. So, and this is how the military purchases it. This is how manufacturers purchase it. And this is how really the whole night vision world works. It's minimum, maximum values of acceptable ranges of specs for that specific tube. So you've got 20, really I'll just start from kind of the bottom of what you see. You'll see some 16 factor tubes out there. You don't really see those much because those are on the lower end, but you'll see 18, 20, 22, and 24 numbered part numbers. And so what that means is that correlates to the minimum and possible maximum FOM that you'll get from that tube. And the reason that I say minimum and possible maximum is that relates to the next letter. So you'll see a number and then either a U or an L. And what that means is, so for instance, using a 20 UA as an example, a 20 series tube is a 1792 minimum FOM tube. Then you've got 22 U tubes and you've got 22 L tubes. The L tubes, those are FOM limited. And the reason you would want to limit your FOM is for export purposes. And so without going down that rabbit hole, that's actually, a lot of people think that your 20 means it's a 2000 minimum. But that's actually a really big misconception. So a 20 series tube is a 1792 minimum. And if it's an L, it's a FOM limited tube. So it's going to be 2000 FOM maximum. Okay. If it's a U, it's going to be 1792 minimum, but an unlimited maximum, if that makes sense. So really going across the tubes, you've got a 20 series tube is a 1792 minimum, a 22 series tube is a 1940 minimum, and a 24 series tube is a 2160 minimum. The U means unlimited or limited, like we just discussed. And then you'll get your last number, which is either an A or an M. And what that's referring to is your spot spec on the tube. So your M is mil spec spot spec. That means that you can have up to 4 spots in the tube, and spots are acceptable in zone 2 and zone 3 versus a tube, which stands for aviation. Obviously pilots, they need a lot stricter spot spec because they're operating in a cockpit and kind of the stakes are higher, if you call it. So that's going to be an aviation spot spec, and that is max 3 spots per tube, but only in zone 3, which is just the outermost rim of the tube.
Okay. So it's like a bullseye.
Exactly. Yeah. So you'll see really, I don't have a piece of paper in front of me, or I can honestly draw it. You'll basically see three circles. So you've got an inner circle, that's zone 1. Then you've got a second circle, and that's zone 2. And then you've got your outermost circle, and that's zone 3. So zone 2 is going to be your primary zone as far as size. Zone 1 is going to be right in the center, but zone 2 is going to be your biggest size zone. So we primarily work with aviation tubes, just because most people want a cleaner tube. Spots are a big thing. So that's why we tend to work more with the aviation stuff, because it tightens up the acceptable spec of what we would get.
Oh yeah. And it's funny because people don't understand, like, I have 31 alphas. Excuse me. And my buddy bought 31 alphas, and he has like three blems, spots on his tube. He was fucking livid when he got his tubes. He's like, this is bullshit. I paid $15,000 for this, and I'm gonna get spots on my tubes. It's like, yeah, it's a military tube, dude. Like,
and see, it's honestly interesting because, like, for instance, your 31s. Obviously, I've looked through those because you got them from us, but so I've had personal eyes on your tubes, and it's like you've got some spots in yours. My personal 31s, I've got some spots in mine. Yeah. I mean, my business partner, he's got spots in his. Honestly, it kind of goes back to, I hate to say it, but this is just kind of brunt. Be an adult and know what you're buying, because at the end of the day, you're spending anywhere from, call it $3,500 to 15, 16,000. You probably should know what you're buying. And that's why we try to push as much education as we can. But if you don't ask the question, we don't know what you don't know. So there is some accountability. And that's why we try to put some resources on the website as far as like spots and listing out spot spec and things like that. Cause it's a reality night vision. I mean, a quote unquote flawless tube is not the norm. And just because you spend a lot of money is not indicative of getting a flawless tube.
Right. Yeah. I have 31s. I have DTMVS that I got from a buddy. I got like a fucking screaming deal on it. Scary screaming deal. So, but yeah, I still like the 31s, even though like the DTMVS probably have better tubes. It's got ocular side zoom. So for people listening, DTMVSs are the new housing. It's same tubes as 31s, right?
So really, it's if we want to get technical, so 31s have a manual gain control. Right. So that's use an 11769 style tube. And all that means is that there's a pigtail off of the tube, and that gives you the ability to have manual gain control.
Right.
DTMVS, what's nice about L3 tubes is their pigtails are removable. And that's by design. So they can, if you remove that pigtail on a 11769 tube, it functions just like a 10160, which is a tube that does not have a pigtail. So DTMVS, it's not a manual gain housing. It's an auto gain housing. So it uses 10160 style tubes, but you can use 11769 L3 tubes.
So different tube, but similar image, kinda. There is a big difference between my 31s and my DTMVSs, and I bought one of those stupid mission recorders, and they're fucking dog shit. Like I bought whatever was on TMVC's website. I bought one for the 31s, it's backward. I bought one for like a PVS 14 rear ocular side, so it would fit my DTMVSs. What I learned is those fucking mission recorders are not obviously in the same focal plane as your eye. So you have to focus the mission recorder to focus the tube to the mission recorder, and then your tube's blurry for you.
And what's interesting about that is it's a bitch to find it, but actually what I would say to do is you got on your DTMVS, you just got standard PVS 14 oculars, right?
Yes.
You're not running. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like you'll have, you attach that to your eye cup retaining ring. And so actually that eye cup retaining ring is threading into the threading on the back of your eyepiece. So what you can do is you can kind of twist it in and twist it out, because that's moving the distance that the mission recorder is to the actual.
Right. Instead of the
so focus. You can find a good focal point where it still works for you.
It's such a fucking bitch, though.
Yeah, it's a bitch. I mean, to be honest, like for what those things cost, they get the job done, but they're not.
They're UV 3D printed like elastomer. They're not hard use. And you're right. You can unscrew that ring. You can just put a big screwdriver in it and just gently turn, and it'll rotate the whole housing. I don't have anything big enough to do the whole thing, but
you can use a butter knife or a credit card too.
Or a butter knife. Yeah. Well, you'd be surprised, dude. I've used a butter knife and I've had fucking those rings in there. But yeah, you can do that. And it was one of those things, we were in Texas, we didn't have time to do it, but still they are 3D printed garbage with it looks like someone took a razor and trimmed off all the flash from the SD card face. And I don't know how it's like a two-piece 3D printed housing that's kind of elastic, and then it's glued together. And that's it. And they're like $400. And and obviously my video camera guy was running it out of focus, trying to follow us, bumping into shit with a single tube. But yeah, you could do that, but then you have to set the mission recorder where you have to change the elevation of your tube, so you're kind of not getting the full experience either, because you have to raise them up so that you're not looking into the mission recorder either. Right. They're cool. I mean, they're cool.
But going back to your original question, as far as image quality.
Yeah, sorry.
There's a couple, got on tangent, no worries. There's a couple different things that go into really perceived image quality. And this is something that's important to understand. And there's a lot of night vision companies out there. And there's a lot of lack of knowledge on the market of really what they're getting from a product standpoint, because tubes, for instance, if I say I've got a 20 UA tube or a 22 UA tube, that's a standard, because you've got your data sheets, that's a part number from L3. And so you kind of know what performance you're getting from that. But right. Also the other factor of that a lot of people don't think of is when you take that tube and we drop those tubes down in a system, whether that be a DTNVS, an RNVG, PVS 14, whatever it is, those tubes, you got to think you've got a front piece of glass on the tube. you've got really three main layers, without getting crazy technical. You've got three main layers of components inside the actual intensifier, and then you've got an output screen. So really that's like 5 layers of stuff going on. And you take that and you're stacking then glass on the front and the back of that tube. So really, you would be surprised. I mean, when you look at system resolution, there's a big difference in what your tube's actually capable of and what your eye actually perceives, because as you know, it's, with using high-end optics and things like that, glass is a big deal. So
absolutely.
One of the reasons, if you hold tubes the same, so if you use let's just say 2 identical tubes and you drop one in a PVS 31 and you drop one in something with PVS 14 glass, you're going to get overall better system resolution from 31s than you are something that uses 14 glass, just because the optics on 31s are a lot better. So
DTMVSs are using 14 glass?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I still have the 14s or the DTMVSs. I like it. The image quality is good. I noticed I don't see like the tube quality is really, 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 really high. So I'm not gonna lie, like my PVS 14 single tube, even my dual tube, I have 3 14s. You see the honeycomb effect in there. Don't see it on the 31s. I don't see it on my DTMVSs, which is kind of nice. What that honeycomb that you see, that little border, those little honeycombs, is that the wafer? What is that inside the tube?
So that's really your microchannel plate that you're seeing. Okay. So that's indicative of a high spec tube, and you'll see that more on filmless L3 tubes than you will a thin film tube. It looks a little bit different, and it looks almost more blockier and more dots than in a. It's hard to explain without having a picture of it, but in a thin film tube like an Elbit tube versus a L3 tube.
If anyone has ever been to DC, it's like the ceiling of the metro system. Yeah, it looks like a honeycomb. But
what that's called is fixed pattern noise.
Fixed pattern noise. Okay. So for people listening, it looks literally like a honeycomb, like chain link fence that's invisible, laid over, like see-through, that's like laid over your image. And you kind of have to focus on it to notice it. But I've noticed between tubes, you can see it or you don't see it. So yeah, I still prefer the 31s. Absolutely. I also have my ballistic helmet set up for the DTMVSs, so inherently I'm going to run my carbon bump over a ballistic helmet any day, because what the fuck is the point spending 8 hours under a ballistic helmet hunting pigs? Like, you're not going
to. You're not getting shot at. A carbon is way more comfortable.
Just gonna run it. Even with I run Team Wendy, so I got Epic Air. It's super comfy, but I just go.
You can look at how thin this is an Ops Core SF carbon.
Yeah,
it's stupid light. You can see how thin the shell is. It's just carbon fiber versus, say, something like this. This is an SF ballistic. You can see that's thick. It's all Kevlar. It's heavy. There's no ventilation, so it's definitely not something that we wear a lot unless we need ballistic protection, being in a shoot house or really on a training range, something like that. But
exactly.
So question for you: you say that you still prefer your 31s. I'm going to go out on a limb and tell me if it's the reason why. I think, is it because you have manual gain on your 31s?
No, I don't, dude. I don't fuck with gain ever on my 30. I keep that shit cranked, and I have focus caps.
Focus, yeah.
Yeah. So I run. So people listening, there's other accessories you can add to your night vision, and I run something called focus caps. Now, your 31s come with bikini strap caps, which are the little pieces of shit rubber. So Tyler in the video is showing these little bikini straps. You can take a 5.56 cartridge and center it on this little mold mark on the inside of the bikini cap, and you can put it on a table and whack it with a hammer, and it'll punch a hole in the bikini cap, and that'll create a secondary focal plane through your tube when you're looking through it, so that it'll obviously restrict your light intake, so it'll get darker, but you'll be able to see your hands or someone's face in front of you. Now, Tyler can correct me, but I look up at the stars and pin those stars in perfect focus, and that's how I run my tubes. And then I run something called focus caps, and they do the exact same thing as punching a hole in your day cap or your bikini strap caps. It's a measured size hole that you can change the size of the diameter of the hole. It comes with like different diameters. I run the ones that are closest to the 5.56 hole size, because it gives you those two ranges of depth perception. So if you don't have a way to change your focal plane when you run tubes, a lot of people will wear them around the house when they first get tubes to get acclimated with your depth perception warping, because your tubes are focused at infinity, but your eyes aren't. So everything's blurry to you up close. So getting in and out of vehicles, going for your seat belt, even taking a piss at night, like it's a fucking challenge without some type of focal plane to change that. And you don't obviously want to keep fucking with your focus all the time. So you either get really, really good at warp depth perception, hand-eye coordination. There's a lot of people, you'll see people all over the internet doing manipulations and malfunction drills under tubes, because they need to get that feel for handling a firearm or a weapon system or whatever the fuck they're doing, and not being able to see what's up close. But there is, and the nice thing about those focus caps that I run is they have another sacrificial lens to them. They have a sacrificial lens in the front, which is kind of nice. And it's so paper thin that it won't really doesn't really change the quality of the tube, in what I've seen. And then I can just swing those little hinged caps open and close if I want to see something up close. Like, oh, I need to go look at something on the table or grab something very specific, or I have to clear a malfunction and I need to look inside the chamber and see what the fuck's going on because I can't feel what's wrong. Swing those shut. So it's cool. And there's all kinds of variations of those. Matbach, they have like an iris.
The Matbox eclipses. You've got the Hoplite from Focus. I don't run them just because I don't have like a huge need for them. They're a great product, and I've honestly just spent so much time under night vision. I've gotten so accustomed to it, and I'm not breaching. That's where the product actually originally was designed, was for breachers, because they're coming up right on the door and they need to be able to have good focal range, but then be able to go in and, possibly say hit a compound, come out, exfil, and now they're out in the open where they need a good infinity focus. So that's why I was designed. They're a great product. But to that point, so I was asking about manual gain. The reason that we're big fans of like the Elbit 5032 and the PBS 31 is manual gain. And really essentially what you're doing is the same thing, because you've got your actual gain on your unit cooked up on the brightness. But then when you put those focus caps on, you're cutting your light transmission. And so that's simulating no different than when I run mine and I turn my gain down. That's going to people overlook manual gain, and it's something that hasn't really been talked about a lot, just because most binocular especially, I'll say it hasn't been something that's been talked about a lot on the commercial market, because the PBS 31s getting de-restricted, there wasn't really a great option. Now people have 5032s from Elbit, which is the marine goggle. And that's the SMVG, the squad night vision goggle. Mm-hmm. And so you'll hear Elbit 5032 or PBS 31D Delta. That's all the same product. And those have manual gain control as well as the 31s. And what's nice about that is if you look at, like, for instance, your DTNVS, and you throw the focus hot plates off the table for a second in the discussion, and you look at like a DTNVS, and that tube is running at max gain all the time. So you'll get a lot of instances where if you're in really dark environments and you start getting that noise in the tube, which if you've never looked through night vision, it honestly just looks like a sparkle effect.
Yes.
And that's called noise. And scintillation. So what that is the tube that is searching for a signal, but there's not enough light to give it a true signal, which is the signal part. And so what you're seeing is the noise, which is just the tube in itself putting off light. So what's nice about a manual gain system is when you're in a situation like that in extreme low light and you're starting to get that noise, you can actually turn the brightness down and you don't lose true image. You're just cleaning up that noise. And in hindsight, if you're in a really high light environment, you can turn that down and really tone in your image quality. So I think manual gain, which for those that maybe don't know what manual gain means, we're just simply talking about you have the manual ability to adjust your brightness. And that's all your manual gain is. Versus an auto gain tube, you do not have the ability to adjust your brightness. And much to most people's misconception, an auto gain tube is not just automatically doing that for you all the time. That's really just to protect from extreme highlight, like explosions and things like that. Because keep in mind, these products are built for war, not, going out and LARPing, which, is fine. It's awesome technology and we want everybody to have it, but you got to just remember what this stuff is actually meant for. So
right.
when you get your DTNBS or your RNVG or something like that, and you don't have that brightness control, I think that really hinders the performance of your tube, which you're seeing just in a different way by you're cutting light.
Yeah. And so in gain, you say that it's adjusting brightness, but to the end user, I mean, that's the easy way to say it, but you're actually adjusting how much light is going through the system because you are able to clean up that noise. It's not just brightness on the end user side, correct?
Right. Which if you get in technical, how you're doing that is you're adjusting the power that's provided to the tube. Right. So your gain control is upping and lowering the power, which then makes your photocathode more sensitive or not as sensitive to light, which to your point increases or decreases the brightness of your tube.
Perfect. We gotta be scientific these days, because science has been misinterpreted lately.
Honestly, there's so much nonsense out there, and and that's probably the biggest thing I would say. The disservice to the night vision industry is you'll get guys that, and it's like you see this all the time. I see this all the time. You get guys that they own one set of night vision, whether that be a super high-end set of goggles or a budget 14 or whatever it is. And they might use it a lot and they feel like they've got a lot of night vision experience. But in reality, unless you've seen multiple grades of tubes, multiple different devices, truly have the ability to test night vision, which that's not a necessity to understand it. But unless you've seen multiple different tubes, multiple different technologies, you really don't know how this stuff works. And there's nothing that's replaced by tube time.
Right. Speaking of tube time, I'm sure the most often question you get asked from new night vision owners is, oh my God, I've got these black streaks all over my tube. What the hell happened?
We didn't read our article on light damage is what happened.
So light damage. But sometimes light damage is inevitable. Like even really dim street lights. I noticed I used to live in the city and I used to do city hikes. We lived right on the edge of this big cliff and we used to do city hikes. Edgar Sherman and I and some of his friends used to go on these little night hikes. And, even just looking up real quick, close to a street light on new tubes, brand new tubes, you'll get streaking that takes, 10 to 20 minutes to disappear. Does that changes with tube time, right? Like the more the tube has been run, that, the effect of bright light on your tube, it refreshes faster. Is that a degradation to the tube or is that just
honestly not really
tubes breaking in?
No, honestly, it's really all that's not going to be affected over the lifetime of the tube.
Right.
Really, it's funny because you see people when they're selling secondary night vision, they're like, only 10 hours on it. It's like, you are literally never going to be able to use your night vision enough to actually just kill a tube. We're talking analog technology. This stuff lasts a very, very long time. But really there's two types. There's two types of quote unquote black things that you'll see in your tubes. And I'm going to correct you on something you said earlier, just because it's important for people to understand, and we deal with this all the time. You said spots or blends, as in they're the same thing, and that's a big misconception that people think that they are the same thing, and they're actually two very different things. Spots are artifacts that are in the tubes that happen during manufacturing, and that's something that is very normal, like we discussed before. There's even a spot spec per tube, and it doesn't even count as a spot unless it's 0.003 of an inch in diameter, because spots happen so frequently. So you could get some peppering in your tubes. Those don't even count as a spot. It's got to be greater than 0.03 of an inch for it to count as a spot. So to have the ability to have up to 4 of those in the tube is actually quite a bit when you think about it. And like, you get a lot of people that bitch because they've got 1 or 2 spots in your tube, which it could be 50% worse, which goes back to why we buy aviation tubes. But so spots happen in manufacturing process. A lot of that is when, without getting crazy too technical, but that honeycomb that you see, those are manufactured as individual honeycombs. There's millions and millions and millions and millions of light fibers that are go into these, and then they fuse those honeycombs together.
Right.
Well, it could be and then when they seal the tube up, it's a true vacuum seal inside those tubes. So it could be a multiple different things. One, it could be broken light fibers. It could be debris. It could be, if you get an emission point or a bright spot in a tube, what they'll do is they'll laser it and turn a bright spot into a black spot, because an emission point can grow and change over time. A black spot really is most of the time doesn't grow or change over time. It can, but so those are spots, and that's going to be something that is going to be noted on the data sheet. Or if you've got a contract tube that's just like a 2376 minimum, it's going to the military, that most of those items don't come with data sheet, but there's still a spot spec for it. Blims, with what you're talking about, is light damage. So a blim is true damage to the tube. So that can come from a multiple of different things, primarily being laser burns are huge. Lasers are almost an instant kill. Like if you get hit with a laser, it's gonna give you a black streak, artifact, dot, whatever, however that laser hits your tube. Most of the time, that's not repairable. Then you'll see light damage. Yeah, you're just fucked in that. Like, we'd love to sugarcoat it, but you're just fucked.
You're just fucked. Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story after.
But when light damage, like, so for instance, street lights, what determines, and where you might see, like, where you might have thought, like, over time it quote unquote broken and healed itself faster, that's really not the case. It just is very environmental dependent. And so, because how your tubes reset, for lack of a better word, and how they're damaged, that's very light dependent. So for instance, if you get a gray streak, which is most of the time what you see when you're using your night vision, and like you said, it's inevitable. It's your buddy's pulling the truck up and hits the brake lights when you're hunting pigs, and you catch a good flash and you got a little gray blob in your tube, or you cross a street light or whatever. Those are, if it's gray and you can still see an image through it, most of the time those are healable, and they'll either go out on their own over just the course of the night using them, or you could throw lens caps on them, black box them for an extended period of time if they're bad, or you could actually take a white light or an IR light and click it on and off and change your environmental conditions at a rapid rate, and that'll kick in your auto gating, and that'll help refresh that tube. But blims are true damage to the tube, versus spots are not damaged, and that's true from manufacturing, kind of like a flaw in a diamond. Yeah,
because one of my 14s has like almost like a little cloudy effect to a whole section.
Yeah,
it's not bad. It's barely noticeable, but when you first get them and you look up at something like a wall, there's this cloudy patch here.
And so a lot of times if that happens and you get a gray streak that doesn't go away, or like a cloudy patch or a blob, a lot of times that would be something that would have healed itself, but you cut power to the tube, so it didn't have the ability to refresh, and time is on your side with that. So if you get a gray streak in your tubes, or you got that's called a temporary light burn, if you get that in it and you don't have to use your tubes, or if it's not something that you feel like it's going to work itself out on its own, throw some lens caps on it, throw it in a bag, black box them, let them run through a battery. But you can't really, time's on your side. Once you cut power to the tube, it's not able to refresh itself. And if it sits like that for an extended period of time, it will become permanent, even though it started as what could have been a temporary burn.
Okay. So those are really, really good tips for anyone listening that have experienced that or are interested in night vision. Some of these things I didn't know. So that's cool. I'm learning too.
But to be honest with you, real quick, I would say people that use their stuff, I mean, obviously I do this professionally. You use your night vision a hell of a lot. To your point, I know it's like everybody wants their tubes to just be flawless as shit and all that. It's like, I get it. I mean, so do we in a perfect world. But at the end of the day, use your stuff. These are tools. I mean, it's no different than like, don't get worked up if your Glock gets scratched if you carry it every day. It's like, and you probably, well, my holster, like scratch mine. It's like
one scratch because I was like at a range day and I got some dirt in
it. Sorry, but just public service announcement, use your stuff. Don't be a crybaby.
All right. So I'm taking notes here on my DMV registration form. So you mentioned lasers. A buddy of mine actually texted me. I'm waiting for some lasers. Anyway, we'll talk about that offline. But buddy was like, yo, I want an NGAL and a Raid X. Do you know where I can get one? And I was like, yep, I know where you can get both right now. Used, light use, whatever. He's like, what do you mean light use? Like, I was like, dude, it's a fucking laser. Put batteries in it. It's okay. Like, so he texted me the other night. I'm not gonna say who it is because he's high profile, but he was like, dude, I almost nuked my fucking tube with this fucking Raid X, dude. Like, he had his tubes on, and I don't know what he was doing, but somehow, and he's got 31 alphas, somehow, like, the laser, like, hit his tube, but, like, the side of his night vision, his tube is on. Like, I can't imagine what he was doing where his laser...
It's probably reflection because lasers reflect.
I don't know, dude. He didn't explain it, but he's like, dude, I fucking hit my fucking tube and I thought I nuked my tubes. And I was like, that would have been bad.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, lasers are dangerous. Like, and don't joke around and shine a fucking laser, full power laser at your buddy's face because he'll make you pay for your tubes or kill you.
Or his eye surgery.
His eye surgery, right? So let's just hope they're blocking it. Can it be so bright through the tube that you can actually damage your actual eyes?
I'm not an optometrist, so I'm not the one to ask, but...
Okay, let's not talk about it. That sounds like someone's going to test it. All right, you mentioned data sheets earlier. So data sheets for people that are listening, sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. Why and why not?
So really the easiest breakdown is if it is a tube that we purchase from L3 as a tube, then those come with data sheets. So we manufacture systems like DTNVS, RNVGs, PVS 14s. Those are systems that we build in-house, and we are buying those tubes from L3 and then building the complete system. We also sell finished goods. So PBS 31s, Elbit 5032s, your clip-ons, your CMB DLRs. If it's an L3 finished good, historically, those do not come with data sheets. And the reason is up until recently, they've been restricted. So those were only available to law enforcement and military. And they don't care about the exact specs of their tubes. And it's funny because you see it on the commercial market. People are just so picky, and they're like, and it's a good thing we live in the high end space because quote unquote, we're picky for the customer. And so we try to give that initial barrier of like, okay, anything you get from us is, even if it's not our highest end offering, it's still a high end offering. But we get customers all the time and so backing up for a second, finished goods traditionally have not, because they hit that 2376 minimum FOM or whatever the contract requirement was. That's a minimum. And then all the other specs on the data sheet have a minimum or maximum. Once those are met, which they test all the tubes so they know, and then they deliver to the military. So the military is not having, their file cabinet of just millions of data sheets, which would kind of be silly. But so that's just, right. Those are finished goods. But if a system is built and it's bought as with tubes that are bought just independently as tubes, majority of the time, those will come with data sheets.
Yay. Fucking data sheets. Yeah. And people ask for that shit all the time. I was trying to sell. Well, what do you think about this? When COVID first kicked off and we didn't know we were going to get a PPP loan, didn't know what was going on, and I got my 31 alphas from you. Like, oh shit. Did I get those? When I get my 31s from you, is that like right at COVID?
Yeah, that was no, I think it was almost right before.
It was before. Yeah, so I was like, oh no, it was. I got them before COVID. I got them
Yeah, 'cause I think it was like right
September or
before.
something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got them and I was like, I'm gonna sell my bridged 14s because I need the money, you know. And the whole setup that I had was decent, matching Viper bodied tubes. Viper bodied tubes for people listening. It's just a somewhat sea hair lighter bodied
I'll show you.
PVS 14.
So this is a Knights Armament M14 housing.
Mhm.
We use these a lot, and we're like, this is an aluminum housing. Same thing, like it's an up armored offering. Same thing like the Viper, but just a slightly different variant. Something like that is what he's talking about versus like your traditional
Plastique.
just mil spec. Yeah.
And I mean, there's nothing bad with that. A lot of the up armored stuff is mostly sexy. If you drop your night vision, you might fuck yourself. How delicate is night vision? And if you want to briefly talk about like entry level 14s versus 31 high end and DTMVSs, RMVGs, like give me the breakdown, if you can, of most durable to most frail.
Okay. So first I'll say, as far as tubes go, people would be actually shocked what they can actually take. So I wish I had one around me because I would show you, but how they ship in just like a little white plastic tube that the tube goes into. And I mean, if you shook it, like there's some play in there. It's secured kind of, but then that's just put in a foam cutout. I mean, you got to think it's not like FedEx is like, oh, these are Licentia Arms' tubes. We're going to be easy with these. They're throwing those things. I mean, so people would be actually shocked what tubes can withstand.
How about let's not say tubes, housings?
So housings, that's where you're going to run into more of a durability range.
That's the range I'm looking for. Sorry, not tubes. I meant housings. You know, tubes is lames me in terms of having night vision, right? So I meant to say, give me the range of durability of housings and why people might want to choose something versus something else.
Yeah. So for instance, this is an RNVG. This is a fixed bridge system. So what that means is there's little screws right here that this is your interpupillary adjustment. And so what that means is that's the distance your eyes are apart from each other. So these optical pods move horizontally on this fixed bridge. So what this does not have is the ability to articulate something like that.
Right.
And so really a fixed bridge system is if you want to just the most rugged, durable thing you could possibly have, honestly, a monocular PVS 14 and up armored housing is going to be the most rugged thing you've got, because it's just one pod. You don't have connections where like these are still connected on the bridge, even though it's a fixed bridge system. So starting from absolute most durable, like if someone was like, hey, I want to go hit the backcountry, I want something I can throw in a pack, and I just want the most durable thing you can possibly have, I would say some sort of an aluminum housing, like a Knights Armament M14 housed PVS 14, because that eliminates the biggest structural integrity issue with goggles, is where these pods meet the bridge. So with the RNVG, it's a fixed bridge and it's made of aluminum. So this is going to be your most rugged option for a true goggle, which for those of you that don't know, RNVG is literally ruggedized night vision goggle. And then you move into your articulating goggles. Like these are 31s. These articulate on this bridge right here. So this is your bridge, and then your pod just moves in and out off of those. Traditionally, in an articulating system, where this is going to break is where your optical pod meets your bridge. So kind of, again, going from most rugged to least rugged, you would have just a single PVS 14 where you don't have a bridge connection. Then going into your RNVG, which is an aluminum body fixed bridge system. Like if you have Sentinels are an older fixed bridge option, but those were really rugged. Nowadays, though, like 31s, I mean, 31s are not the most durable thing on the market, but I say that with caution because what people need to realize is obviously if these are going to Uncle Sam, it's not a huge deal because, you know, our lovely tax dollars are paying for them. But if you're a commercial user, to be honest with you, you got to realize these are meant for war. So most people are not going to come anywhere close to breaking these when they're shooting with their buddies on flat range. Honestly, the people that probably are the most rugged on their goggles is hunters. Hog hunters, they're not your guy that just is staring at a white wall to find every little speck in their tube. I mean, this is a tool. They're out to stack pigs, and that's what it is. So if you're getting real technical, a DTNBS, I would say, is going to be more rugged than a PBS 31, just because that's a carbon fill polymer. And I mean, you can torque on them pretty good, and they will withstand it, and they're a pretty durable system. Then I would say Elbit 5032s are next. They're pretty rugged. They feel good, and you can torque on them. 31s are still, I mean, they're still built for war. They're still rugged, but on the scale, if we're being technical, this would be kind of your most fragile system. But really where you're going to get that damage is if you crank a pod on a door jam or something where it puts, you know, tweaking pressure on this. But good thing is
torsional pressure on the hinge.
Right. But good thing is that's not really going to mess up your tube most likely, because your tube's inside here. You're just going to break the joint. So, I mean, you can always have these housings replaced, and that's something
you can now.
Right. Yeah. So if you've got 31s, if you're like your old 2013 data manufacturer, you probably don't want to send those back. But you know, now you're pretty much good to go if you get it from a legitimate source.
Yes. Even if they predate the legal release date, is L3 really going to look into it, or does it matter?
Honestly, I would say it's just kind of really the situation in which you got them. Like for instance, I mean, when we hooked you up with your 31s, those were still technically a restricted product. And, but we had an extra set that we had acquired for demo purposes that we didn't need anymore. And so we were able to, you know, pass those along off to you. But so like, for instance, if yours broke, that's totally fair game. Really, I would say at this point, if you buy it from a legitimate dealer, and even if it predates it, as long as you go through the dealer to get a service, because I mean,
if someone can have a 31 on a shelf and be like, "Oh, there's one right there. We can sell it to you." Yeah, you know, like it's not like it's controlled like that.
Right. That, and honestly, that restriction, most people don't realize it is, and I will, if you don't care, I will hit on this really quick as a brief little tangent because I think it's important. But restrictions, when you look at restrictions, you've got contractual restrictions with like 31s and the 2376 minimum stuff that L3 was putting out. And then you've got FDA restrictions on lasers. A lot of people would bitch about the restrictions on 31s, and like now you've got fusion goggles and things like that, ENVG Bravos and all that are still restricted. But people need to remember on the commercial market that the government is basically buying the R&D to get to where we are now. And we wouldn't even have the nice tubes that we have that if it wasn't for the government continually progressing that. So it's kind of a nature of the beast. And it's kind of a good thing, is even though we wish everybody have everything, but we have to protect our warfighter. And that's why the nature of night vision restrictions were in place.
Right. Cool. All right, so we touched on that. I'm still taking it. So battery, you talked earlier about nuking it by leaving it in a black box effect with your battery on. You hear a lot of people say, don't leave batteries in your tubes. I think my Uncle Todd, who you know, I'm pretty sure he puts his batteries in backwards and keeps the caps loose, which for me, knowing electricity, that seems wrong, but
I would recommend that.
Yeah, I would recommend that. I think he said he puts his in backwards, so he knows that he's never going to leave them on or something like that. But leaving your battery in your tubes, not like, obviously, if you do, hopefully it's in a black box, but turned off. A lot, you and I have talked about, 31 alphas are great because they got a battery disconnect to the battery pack. And instead of having to unscrew and put a battery in your tube because you need it in emergency, you just plug and go. Why no batteries?
Right here.
There you go. So why? So go ahead. Sorry.
Ability to pull this off, plug that right in. And if you use your night vision a lot, you don't have to dick with unscrewing this and screwing it back on. Huge benefit.
Okay, huge benefit. But what's the problem leaving a battery in your tube with your tube off?
So really, honestly, it's to protect the stupid in people and to protect there's two reasons. Protect the stupid, because there's a lot of people that use night vision that have a lot of money invested in it that aren't super experienced with it. And they may accidentally leave it on. They might turn it on inadvertently. It might be in a pack and flip your power knob. First reason is accidental light damage. The second reason is alkaline batteries can leak. Batteries can swell from heat.
The gas, yeah.
Yeah, and then if that happens, if batteries swell, then you've got, you can't get it out. You've got to send it back to us, and we got to try to dig it out. And if we can't dig it out, you might have to replace your battery pack on like 14, or you might have to replace your housing. So really, it's just to protect against damage.
Right.
In theory, if it's in a climate controlled environment, then you don't have and you're using the lithium battery, and you don't have the fear of it swelling, and you don't do anything stupid, it's not really going to hurt them.
Right.
If they're not turned on. The common question we get is, can I burn my tubes if they're not turned on? Really, the only way you can do that is if you have them like if you're day noodling. And that's why the reason these come with bikini covers, or you've got like lens caps. We ship all of our systems with lens caps on them. Because if you're day noodling and you've got them flipped up, say like, a war fighter is going to be in possibly a daylight environment, but go into a dark environment, which happens during the day. They'll have their night vision on, and so they can obviously go dark if needed. But really, the only way to damage it without them actually powered on is if your system is looking at the sun for an extended period of time, because your front objective is going to act like the same kind of thing, a magnifying glass.
Point.
Yeah, so it could burn your tubes that way. But that's the main reason with batteries.
All right, you talked about 31 alphas up. 31 alphas have a mercury switch inside. If you tip them up, they turn off. So they have a safeguard in there for warfighters, because warfighters might not turn things off. I disabled mine mainly because I was in a vehicle night vision class up at Ridgeline Defense Training Center, and it was a 2-day night operators course. And the last night we did this course of fire where you had to run and shoot under vehicles and stuff. Great. When you're shooting under vehicles or doing junkyard prone or shooting off of your support thigh hand, tubes turn off. And I wish I knew how to disable them in that moment, because we were doing a relay and I kept getting tagged out by Edgar because my tubes kept turning off. Yeah. And I'm not a slow shooter. I'm fast. I'm accurate. I'm good. Like I'm a big dude, but I get around, right? He tagged me out because I think I had a little bit higher accuracy with my tubes that night. My laser was zeroed really, really well. So I probably could have kept away from him, but it was like a tag relay style deal, and I got tagged out like every time from Edgar being fucking behind me, and super bummer. So disabled my mercury switch. But are there any other tubes that turn off when you flip them up other than 31 alphas or the 31s? So,
and real quick, for those listening that may have 31s that don't know how to disable it, didn't read your manual.
Nope.
Manuals, those not.
Tyler?
Yeah. You just hit your power button real quick in succession 5 times, and that'll disable that.
When it's off?
Actually when it's on, and you'll get your light pipe will blink at you, so you know that it's happening. It's actually for jumping, is why they have that feature built in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but so a PVS 14 can turn off when flipped up, but that is not inherently in the unit. That is in the J arm. So, and there's 2 contact points. There's 2 contact points on the housing, so that works with your J arm, and whether whatever. So that'll work. And then you've got your 5032s that when you articulate in your DTMBS, that when you articulate them out, those will shut off. And but other than DTMBS, I should know this off the top of my head. They turn off when you flip them up, correct? Don't they? Or no?
I haven't tried. I haven't.
Yeah. Honestly, I
haven't looked up. Well, no, I don't think so, because I've looked straight the fuck up. Yeah.
They do actually. I know they do because
Okay.
I run it. I run it
inverted, I think.
Well, I run it when I'm building them and they're down on the Hoffman for extended period of time, like because they're straight down on the Hoffman, they'll turn off. So yeah, DTMBS does, and I do not believe RNVGs do.
All right, easiest way.
Honestly, the reason that I say that, and it's like I should know that off the top of my head, but turn your damn unit off if you're flipping it up, and you're not in war. Turn your unit off. Don't rely on that.
Yeah,
because the moon. A lot of people don't think about that. Full moon can burn your shit.
Oh yeah. I got some nice little temporary fucking streaks from a full moon in Texas 2 weeks ago. It was so fucking bright, dude. I didn't even need my tubes. I could see the deer with plain eyes.
While you're down there, we're down in there too.
Yeah.
Monster a sniper competition. It was perfect conditions, super clear. It was awesome.
God. Well, the night before it was horrible. It was dark as fuck with like no loom. You'll hear people talking about luminescence at night. That's just a word that you'll hear night vision dudes talk about. I was going to say is easiest way to get your spouse to approve your expensive purchase is let her look up at the starry night for 20 minutes and she'll see more shooting stars in 20 minutes than she has in the last decade. Fastest way to get your spouse to approve your shit. Or just
don't be a bit boy and ask for forgiveness.
That too, but there comes a point where it's like, that fucking shit is stupid. You're in the dark with your friends with straws on your feet. Just like, no, look through this. And then just, oh my God, a shooting star. That was amazing. Yeah. So there you go.
That is your wife. We'll say show people the night sky.
Dude, we have a lot to talk about. We've already done an hour. All right.
I'm on no schedule, so we're on your schedule.
Either. I need a nap. I'm fucking exhausted. This puppy is killing me. And I might actually have to take a break soon to let her out because she is a puppy. All right. Entry level tubes. What is the number one entry level basic ass bitch setup, but something that will carry over? So Wilcox G24 mount that mounts to the shroud on your helmet. So when you talk about mounts, we're talking about the fucking articulating dangly boy. He's got it on camera if you're listening, but G24 is the quintessential mount. It's $564 or mid fives. What? $49, whatever. They're fucking, they're almost $5. They're around $5. They're fucking expensive, but it's the greatest purchase you can make for your fucking helmet, for an accessory for your night vision. Wilcox J Arms for PVS 14. Go with those. Don't go with the factory dog shit.
Yeah, but
right? It doesn't matter. You don't need to show it. It's a J arm. It's pretty. It's got a big knob on it.
Yeah.
But it's metal.
Don't buy stupid shit because you're literally hanging your investment off of it. So
bungees, always tether your shit. Guess who fucking bombed a set of tubes on the ground? This guy here. Luckily, it was just the disconnect, the battery pack disconnect inside the 14 actually unplugged. So I got lucky. So a decent spec white phos filmless PVS 14 with an armored housing. That's what we suggest everyone.
Yeah, there's honestly what I would say is there's one question you got to ask yourself. Do you want to have the ability to go to binos and go to goggles at some point? And if like this PVS 14 is just as most as you can afford.
Right.
And the PVS 14 is the most that you can afford. An Elbit YH, which is a mil spec 1600 minimum FOM thin film tube. It's by no means a screamer, but it's a quality tube. You're looking $3,500 for that. The J Arms like $225, and then the G24 is $500. And you've got everything minus like your helmet setup. But if you're going to, if it's $3,500 is just the max you can afford on your unit, that's where we would shoot for. When you start getting below that, you start really doing yourself a disservice exponentially with saving money but cutting performance. But we always recommend if you can't get a set of goggles, but you want to be able to be serious about this and grow with it. If you buy from someone like us that's a true manufacturer, and we can do tube swaps, do the whole 9 yards. We get the best L3 filmless tube you can afford, because what we can do is we can take that tube, we can use your glass from your PVS 14, and we can match it in a set of goggles down the road, which saves you really don't take a big hit doing that. You probably take $200-$300 hit spreading it out. But like we said before, the L3 tubes give us that flexibility so they can grow with you. So if you can go L3, go L3.
So yeah, a single monocle to start if you really want to get into night vision. It's a buy once, cry once. It's a buy once, cry once fucking investment. If you go with these poopy green tubes and you just kind of cheapen out on stuff, you're going to suffer. You're not going to get the experience that you think or hope to get. So spend a little bit extra money, save up your paychecks, whatever it is, just save up, do it right the first time, because I bought a single tube and then like a year later I bought two more single PVS 14s bridged on a fucking Mod Armory mount, and I'm just like, man, why didn't I just buy like binos, and it's okay. Like my business partner has those now. He runs those. That's what he runs. And they're good. I mean, they're super fucking durable. I'd rather have him have the most durable PVS 14 aluminum, rigged up system, because he doesn't know night vision that much. And if he beats the shit out of it, who cares? Going into 31s are kind of like the high end. 31 alphas for like your everyday person, that's definitely high end. I think the price went down a little bit since I bought mine. Did it?
Yeah, really. And honestly, it was TNBC that negotiated that with L3 Harris and Insight to be able to bring that to market, which was a great thing. Hats off to them. That was really what turned the leaf on the de-restriction of the PBS 31s, because the SOCOM's going to a higher minimum FOM, and the 2376 stuff was de-restricted with a lot of the direction of SOCOM and the military going more towards IVAS and augmented reality and fusion systems. So the price did go down, which was nice. And so you're looking at 13.7 is really
I lost money. Yay. But I have them.
But then you can do like a hand select. We've got an option where we do a hand select for an aviation spot spec, because a lot of people that are spending 13.7, I think we charge like 14.9 or 14.950, somewhere around there. And we hand select those to an aviation spot spec, which is honestly, in my opinion, if you're picky about spots, at $1,200 is a no-brainer, because don't get pissed if you flip them on and you see a zone 2 spot.
Right.
Because they're mil spec spot spec tubes.
Right. Dude, by the way, I have a great idea, because we're sitting like at an hour and 4 minutes. Let's close up this podcast. Let's cut it down.
Right.
And we're going to record, because dude, I have helmets on here, lasers. Like,
we talk for hours.
million versus like mil, like full power, like what to get into lasers. I still want you to talk about your products that you do have manufactured that has your name on it. I want to talk about light radiation and light pollution, and like driving with headlights on, and how it's like okay. There's a lot I want to talk about, and I think this is like one of the more super important educational podcasts. So everyone, thanks for listening to episode 7 of the ANR Design Unholstered podcast.